Hi, Holly.
Hey Simon, how are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Good. Well, look, thank you ever so much for doing this. I know how incredibly busy you are, and it's great to have some time with you and some insight into your world.
No, brilliant. Oh, and thanks for inviting me on, Simon. And always great to have a conversation with you. Always enjoy it.
Absolute pleasure. Now, I know you. I know you like to get straight into the thick of things. There's no messing around, is there? So, tell me about you. Tell me about the career, I suppose, that's led you to the point that you're in now, um, and the various businesses that you started along the way.
Yeah, so Simon, you and I met through sort of a previous couple of years ago, didn't we, around kind of the whole sport and activity sector.
Yeah.
And my whole career, I guess, since about the age of 20 has been in sport, physical health. And my personal passion is about helping people sort of get active and get the life benefits of being active and living a healthy lifestyle. So I kind of started probably quite traditional end of sport. My first job was British Cycling. I was one of the very first development officers developing cycling. It's quite incredible to see the journey that cycling's been on as a sport actually over 20 years. And then I've kind of worked within sort of a few other national governing bodies, Sport England around kind of physical activity sport policy, which had an incredible time actually trying to sort of shape how in London we got more people active, which was a sort of a fun time. My last proper job, as I like to call it, was nearly 7 years ago now. I was exec director at England Hockey. And my job was about getting more people engaged and excited about the sport, which I was very proud to lead an incredible team through sort of 2012 and the whole Olympics in London. And we managed to increase the sport by sort of 20,000 more people playing the sport. And for those of you hockey fans out there who have watched the growth of hockey, it's been quite exponential actually in the last sort of even sort of since the time I've left 6 7 years. So yeah, a whole lifetime really in sport activity. I left England Hockey because I guess I had a really sort of strong purpose gnawing away at me about getting more people active. And I found that the existing sports sector, as great as it is, as passionate everybody is, we weren't solving the problem of inactivity. Sitting in a lot of the same meetings with a lot of the same people, scratching our heads, trying to figure out how do you get the whole nation more physically active. So I felt that it was time to leave and try starting my own business and to see if I could find new and different ways to get people excited about being active. So yeah, that's a very short potted history of my kind of career so far.
Yeah, but it seems quite detailed. It seems like you've had two levels. One, you've seen the top table in terms of senior management, but the two, you're also dealing with what we called, didn't we, pre-contemplation, and that's getting more people actually, I suppose, off the sofa and into activity.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, what I kind of realise, and I have to put myself in this category because I generally love activity. I'm somebody that enjoys it. I enjoy how it makes me feel. I enjoy the process of being active, which not everybody does. I think some of that is about understanding yourself and finding the things you enjoy doing. And the better you are at things, the more you like to enjoy it as well. So I think there's something around that. But I think a lot of people in our sort of sport and activity sector love sport, absolutely love it. And I think
Yeah.
find it hard to understand people and behaviours and thought processes if you really just don't love it. You've not had a great experience at school, you've been put off by it. Why would you possibly go and do something that made you feel quite sort of miserable and unhappy? So that's the real challenge that we've got, is just trying to get people excited, interested, enjoying being active and motivated to kind of get out the door and do something for themselves.
Yeah, and we'll come on to that later on with her spirit, because you see it through very much through those eyes, don't you?
Yeah.
Which is good. So have you always been interested in sport and well-being, but sport yourself even from a toddler?
Yeah, I think I was probably one of those kids at school that probably excelled at being active and moving. I was all right academically. I kind of did what I needed to do. I was pretty average. I've realised about myself, I don't like being average. And I think probably as a young person, I was above average at sports. So I think that's probably the thing that I latched onto and created a bit of my identity. So I always say I got into my first job at British Cycling because I grew up in a hockey club. I was 13, 14, started playing hockey, met some brilliant teammates who I just enjoyed their company. I enjoyed the camaraderie, the sense of belonging. Playing the game was just part of the picture. So I thought, wow, I've had an incredible growing up in a hockey sort of club experience. I want to help other people have that experience. And I guess that's where my journey started when I realised halfway through university, where I was quite bored. Clearly that academic and boredom thing go together with me. And I realised there was a big world out there that I could affect change in. So I was desperate to get on it. So much to my parents' chagrin, I left university halfway through and got my first job at sort of British Cycling to help others have hopefully an amazing sport kind of experience.
And what do you think a community brings to a person's well-being then? Why is that important?
Well, I think when you start to dig below the levels, I think as human beings, being connected, feeling like you belong to a group or groups of people, so whether that's your family, that's probably your greatest connected kind of unit, your friends. I think that sense of belonging and connectedness is absolutely kind of fundamental to what makes us being human. And I think the irony of the time that we're sitting in through COVID-19, I think the ability to connect face to face with people was ripped away from all of us. And I think the nation's probably been going through a bit of a collective grieving process, actually, of the loss of that connectedness. We're resourceful beings, humans, so we've kind of pounded technology and Wi-Fi to help us stay connected in some quite sort of interesting ways. So I guess being connected to people, belonging to something, is in the essence of us as kind of human beings.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was part of a rugby team when I grew up, so cutting your teeth in, having a drink, camaraderie, celebrating losing as well as winning, all good important stuff. This question will kind of bridge us between where we are now and into her spirit. What do you think the importance is around collaboration when it comes to trying to find a solution for well-being as a whole? And then we'll sort of narrow it down into where you're specialising now.
Yeah, I guess well-being is a really big term, isn't it?
Yeah.
Use. It's kind of like a panacea really for sort of health and how you feel. I think through my journey of sort of creating Her Spirit, there's particularly for women, that's where Her Spirit is focused. There's kind of like some really big issues in the world. Obesity rates have doubled in the last 20 years. I think only 40% of women are actually being active to a point where they're getting a health benefit. So a health benefit means kind of raising your kind of heart rate. And the other thing, and I think this is probably more prevalent now than any time, is that 2/3 of women are more likely to be diagnosed with anxiety. They're pretty fundamental kind of pieces. And my view, and I know my co-founder Mel with Her Spirit's view, is that if we're going to solve some really big problems that population has in the world, then there's not going to be one solution to that. So actually the more we can work with different types of partners, collaborators, and in our world, that's working with public sector, that's working with private sector, that's working with citizens, individuals, about individual responsibility as well as the workplace, or sort of government. So we believe that the problems are absolutely ginormous, and they're not going away. I think COVID-19 just accelerates some of the conversations around health and well-being, and whether that's mental or physical. So ultimately my passion right from the day I started my first job was about helping people be active and sort of healthier. So if we're serious about it, then partnering with others we think is an absolute kind of must.
Yeah, I completely agree. You have to partner and collaborate, mainly because the problem will never be solved, because it moves and morphs and goes into different things, as we just found out sitting here for context in the middle of COVID.
Yeah.
So, right, what is Her Spirit then?
Yeah, so I've obviously alluded to it. So Her Spirit, I guess, is the culmination of 20 plus years of myself and my co-founder Mel Berry's kind of idea about how we could get millions of women more active and being sort of healthier. So we're a coaching app for your mind, body and fuel. We fundamentally believe that actually the relationship between your mind, your body and how you fuel yourself are absolutely linked. So, you know, if you actually look at the well-being environment, you've got these verticals going on where someone's dealing with food, someone's dealing with fitness, and someone's dealing with mind. Now, some do it and cross over to a little bit, but they kind of tend to have a predominance. So what we've done with Her Spirit is we've created a sort of personal coach in your pocket, that every day we can support you to manage your mind better, create a toolbox when times get sort of tough. We're just developing a sort of a 6-week anxiety program. So if you're really sort of struggling with anxiety, or you have a moment in life where you are, then you can literally just hook into that. With Body, we're offering online kind of live classes around getting stronger, more flexible. If you're into running, how we can help you run better and enjoy the experience of running, cycling. And then on Fuel, I'm really passionate about fuel because it's the thing that I've really struggled with over the years. Really misunderstood calories and calorie counting. I grew up probably with a parents that believed in kind of calorie deficit, Jane Fonda, and I thought the way to lose weight was to starve myself as much as possible and exercise like Billy O, and it doesn't work that way. So what we're trying to do is demystify nutrition, understand the basics of nutrition, 4 or 5 easy things you can do in your lifestyle that will actually give you a healthier life. So we have an amazing community. We've got quite a few thousand women now that are daily sharing their experiences of good days and bad days around their mind, body and fuel. And it's amazing to see women who start on the journey with us and when they post saying they've just achieved something they never thought kind of possible. So I guess we're trying to create a place where you can learn to live a healthy, active lifestyle in a fun way rather than a calorie deficit, I'm exercising because I have to, or starving myself because I believe that's the way I'm going to feel better about myself. So yeah, a lot of hard work, a lot of passion has gone into Her Spirit, and we're just starting out on that journey really around that whole well-being.
Can I say one thing that shines through from that as well is authenticity, which I think will come more prevalent now in this day and age where we've completely all been normalized by what's happening and we're all on the same level. But because you've been there and done it, and you tell the story of as you were growing up and the calorie deficit and the Jade Fonda and all that, it makes it incredibly authentic. You know, I can imagine you're not going to struggle for people wanting to follow Her Spirit.
Well, no, and I think, you know, probably, I guess, you know, if you stand outside of obviously Her Spirit and everything, it's kind of like, what's life about, you know? And I guess there's probably people asking themselves that question at the moment, you know, Mother Nature's way of maybe giving us a bit of time out and correcting maybe some of the things that are going on. And I think probably I did hit 40, and I think I did have a bit of a midlife crisis. Didn't buy the fast car.
That was my next question. What did you do? Tell me off record.
Well, I'll tell you on record, because it's a really my journey actually, because I kind of realised that I spent a lot of time in my work being really important to me because I'm passionate about it, but I was kind of defining myself by the end outcome, and forgetting to live in the moment. And I think, you know, when you leave a well-paid job with security and you throw it all in the air to try and follow a dream, then, you know, that's quite a liberating and scary kind of process. And I think when you go through that process, you start to fear a lot less. And I think I'm at the point now where I just think, you know what, living life to the full, being happy, not asking yourself those questions, what if, that for me is my kind of mantra, and that's where we're at now. And you know, with Her Spirit, we're deeply passionate about it. We believe the world needs it. We're starting to see some real success with it. But ultimately, if it doesn't work, then that's life, isn't it? But actually, we want to try something to change the world, because if you don't try, then you'll never know. So I think that's probably what drives both Mel and myself actually on that kind of whole Her Spirit journey.
Well, that's exactly the same journey that we're on with Wellity. Just try it. You know, it serves a purpose. It's coming from a good place. You put enough gusto behind it and collaborate with as many people, you stand as good a chance as any. And if we knew what was going to be successful, well, it would be a different place, wouldn't it? If we all had a rule book.
Yeah, absolutely. I always kind of say to people when they're kind of the self-belief bit starts to kind of kick in, I always say to them, you know, it is a well-known saying, if not you, then who?
Yeah.
You know, I always think of, and I love technology. I'm a late onset technology geek, I think. But, you know, Steve Jobs, when he came up with the mobile phone, or the first iPhone, he didn't ask people what they wanted and that's what they said they wanted. He had a vision and a dream and said maybe the world could look really different if we had one of these in place. And he had that vision to say what that thing could be. And now look at the world. You know, actually, we probably run, you know, mobile phones are more powerful than most laptops that you buy. So you need people to risk, to jump out the aeroplane without a parachute, hopefully not hit the floor.
Well, you look at Elon Musk as well.
Yeah, yeah, really.
So is it that these people don't have inner critics? Do they back themselves? And my next point is that after our discussion on anxiety, which is close to my heart, and the fact that you're going for it now, has your inner critic calmed down? Did you have one at the start, or have you mastered it?
Oh, do you know, I mean, what is the inner critic? I don't know. Is it the conversations you have in your head?
Yeah. Are they kind to you? Are they promoting you and pushing you? Or are they saying, fight or flight, be careful?
Yeah, I think they do all of that, don't they? At different times in different situations. And I guess probably that's the bit about mastering your mind and taking time to understand yourself. I think when you understand your purpose and your drivers, you start to give it a bit of context. And I think the inner critic is probably part what you think of yourself, your self-esteem, and part what you maybe perceive others think of you, and also part what you see others describing of you. So it's all these elements that come together. And obviously, if you're in that moment where, you know, you've had a bad day and the numbers are going in the wrong direction or something's happened, those three things can converge really quickly and it can overwhelm you. And I think that's where anxiety probably is the root of some of that comes in. It's never just one thing, probably. It's a series of things that kind of build up. Someone described it to me as like the stress bucket. They've got a bucket and the bucket's only so big. If you keep putting stuff in, at some point, it's going to overflow. And it's kind of like we all probably live life with the stress bucket quite full. And it doesn't take a lot now to kind of overflow it. So it's kind of like, you know, learning to understand yourself and learning to switch off. I think I switch it off sometimes. I know I needed to look at something the other day and I knew the information might not mentally work for me. I know I needed to know this information, but I deliberately didn't look at it on the Friday. I actually looked at it on the Monday because I thought, I know that if I look at it on the Friday, it could really impact my weekend because I understand myself well that I will obsess about that information. I'll obsess about solving whatever the problem that information has told me that I have to solve. So I kind of, you know, I guess over time you learn to manage it, but I don't believe anyone if they say that they've got their inner critic under control.
No, and anxiety and shame and all that, they get stronger in silence. And I guess that's what Her Spirit is helping to do because you're not silent, you're on your own. Which leads me on to the next one. What is your ambition for Her Spirit? How are you judging if it's a success?
Yeah, so we almost from day one, and this was one of those kind of inner critics, what people think of you things. From day one, Mel and I said, we want to make a statement about Her Spirit. We're really serious about this. We're putting many years of reputation, experience on the line. And we went out and said, we want 1 million women using Her Spirit within sort of the next 3 years. So and people were like, oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
People just like, yeah, right, whatever. Others were like, amazing. That's a brilliant ambition. I really love that. And I guess the number was less relevant. It's about the size of it. We want every woman to be able to access high quality coaching support for their mind, body and fuel. Think about universal kind of access to the NHS, but the preventative part before you even get to the NHS. So we want to help people live happier, healthier lives, be fitter, stronger and healthier, so they don't have to get to the doors of the NHS. And I guess that whole thing I talked earlier on about how do you bring public and private together. We've thought really carefully about that right from the start. I mean, I've worked in public sector with lottery money, with government funding, and it does an amazing job, but it only does the job for as long as the money's there. So one of my real frustrations turned passions is how do we create a blended funding model between public and private that means that those that can afford to buy our app, for example, it's only $4.99 a month, free at the moment till the end of June. It's actually, if you can afford it, you can buy it. You get great kind of value. If you can't afford it, we will gift a subscription to a woman who can't afford it. So for every subscription bought, we will gift a subscription to someone who can't afford it. So, and we believe that kind of model means that we can have a million women, of which 500,000 of those could be women who are on low or no income, and they will still be able to access the same high quality coaching and expertise that someone who can afford it. So we're really kind of working hard on how we create long-term sustainability. So ultimately, we want to be global. We want every woman who could access our kind of app to access it and feel the benefits of it.
And who wouldn't want to see that? And we'll certainly be behind you where we can as well, Holly. So are there stereotypes that you experience about women then? I mean, you're specialising in women. So what are the trends that you're seeing? We spoke briefly before, fear of judgment, perhaps, to be able to get involved. And how do you combat that?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of research done around women and inactivity. Actually, I was on the Women in Sport board for 5 years, and that was, it's been my personal passion around women right from the start. And I don't think the issues have changed. I think Sport England did some quite in-depth research that sort of born sort of the This Girl Can campaign, which was based on the fear of judgment. So women probably fear being judged around physical activity more so than men fear being judged. I mean, I think men fear being judged. I think when you just look at the stats, it's just more women fear judgment. And I think as a consequence, there are less women being active than men. So there is a gender gap in terms of activity. We've really dug into the fear of judgment about what that really means. And our last 18 months of working with, hundreds of women now trying to understand that. What it comes down to is probably a sort of a fear of capability. Something called the COMBI model around behaviour change. So capability, opportunity, motivation. For women, we think that capability is the big showstopper. So forget opportunity and motivation. If you don't feel capable, you don't try something. So we've had women that turn up to our sessions who won't go to a club or a sports environment. And we say, well, why did you come? Why did you come to us? And they said, well, I was concerned that I was going to be the oldest, the fattest, the least able person that would turn up. I would never turn up to a sports club or a defined sports environment, an existing kind of group. So I've sat on your app for 6 months and I feel like this could be a place that I'm okay and I can just try, and it's okay to try. And I think that language of the slowest, the least capable, the oldest, the fattest, that's the language that a lot of women will use in their heads before contemplating trying a new activity. I think when I spoke to you, Simon, last week, I think I used the analogy of signing up for an event. I think women will probably generally only sign up for, like a running event, if they absolutely believe they can achieve it. A guy will probably go, do you know what, done no training, I'll just turn up and give it a go. And I know it's terrible stereotypes and should have, generalised.
That's what I do. That's exactly what I do. And I need to work under pressure. So I know I'm not going to choose to do a marathon or a 69 mile, whatever it is. But if I sign up, there's other influences involved, like peer pressure and all sorts.
Yeah. So I think, slightly long rambling kind of answer, but ultimately, there's so many barriers before a woman is probably likely to take that first step into being active. And that's probably that inner critic and that conversation that's been had in somebody's head. So that's a significant issue that we're trying to kind of unpick and create a sort of a safe first step into a whole world of possibility.
So knowing that all that is part of the decision-making process before they download your app or buy your app or become involved in Her Spirit, does it give you it obviously gives you a massive sense of achievement when you hear that ping and somebody else has signed up and you think that they've had that journey?
Yeah, I think, there's the sign up is okay. We know there's a kind of vanity numbers in a way. I think what we're really interested in is the progress and the journey that people go on. So we're sort of busy documenting people's journey with us. And we've seen phenomenal changes already, you know, with some of our kind of women. And it's when you see that post that you just think, wow, you know, we literally have changed somebody's life. And particularly through COVID-19, you know, some of the posts we've had is that people have used the word life-saving.
Wow.
Times, and I can't tell you how sort of, you know, humble you feel with that. And, you know, if we do that for a small number of people right now, well, we will have achieved a significant part of our kind of individual kind of purpose, regardless of where we get to in the future. So I think everything that we do, our critical selves, we're not happy unless we're seeing people changing and transforming their lives. So it kind of does matter, obviously, sign-ups, but it matters more the impact of actually what we're doing and the changes that we're seeing.
Well, that leads me beautifully on to the next question. That humbling feeling that you have when that happens. Now, money can't buy that. Do you think COVID-19 is changing the landscape where we prioritize our health and well-being, perhaps what we may have done before in financial terms or job role? How do you think it's going to change?
Yeah, I think it will change people, and I think the environment will change. I think as one of my business mentors, a guy called Chris Brindley, and an incredible guy, and you know, he said to me, Holly, there's three things that creates change, and that's consumer behaviour or consumer trends, technology, and world order. So where there's a world order change, and we've just had a world order change. You know, we've had a pandemic of the magnitude that none of us have seen in our lifetimes and probably never will. You get then the consumer kind of change piece going on around that, and then the technology piece that, you know, is massively kicked in and accelerated. So we're living in unprecedented times. I think there'll always be people that will see this as an opportunity to make changes, and there'll always be people that will not take the opportunity to make those changes. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what behaviours change. My experience of probably working with people around behaviour change is that, particularly around health and wellness, is that actually a major health event with you or a close family member often creates the need to change or the motivation to change. So I guess maybe, you know, if you or a family member has a stroke, and you know actually that you've not been as active as you should be, or you drink a bit too much and for your health, and actually don't eat so well, having a major health episode will kind of create change. Effectively, the whole globe has had a major health episode, you know, whether you've had COVID or not. There's a lot of fear. So I think fear, if channeled right, could create some really positive behaviours around health and wellbeing. So, you know, it's not going to be lost on people that when you look at the stats, I think I was reading an article the other day that there's a higher degree of people that are obese who have died from COVID-19. Chief Medical Officer for the first time has said one of the ways to combat something like this is to be physically active. So never before has there been such strong health and physical activity messages out there.
Yeah, it's something that still staggers me, that has to be laboured, that point that exercise is good for you. But I guess everyone's going through their own times, and it's where it lies on their list of priorities. So how do you see the commercial landscape? And what I mean by that is, are the stereotypes that you're seeing with Her Spirit the same as that women face when going into work or in the workplace? And do you see that COVID will change that landscape for when women return?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to tell. Some of the early conversations coming out, even World Health Authority is saying that they think that women will be disproportionately disadvantaged by COVID. And I think some of that is because women tend to take that carer role. So if you're looking after elderly parents or children at the moment, you're probably still doing all of those things. You're homeschooling your children. So there's probably even less time for you. So actually quite interested to look at the participation rates of women through this period, supporting them, doing some polling actually, that will give us a bit of sense around kind of change. The other thing is, the rate of domestic violence and abuse has massively gone up in lockdown, which is, it's always been there, and it's easy to sort of turn the other cheek, but it's really prevalent. So I think for women, I think the world is very different. I'm hoping that employers will sort of see the benefits of working from home and using technology, reduce commuter times, travel times, and I think being able to work from home and be more flexible, I think will help women in particular give a bit more time back, because they're pretty time poor at the best of times. So most women will do something for someone else before they'll do it for themselves. So I think employers and businesses have a huge opportunity to actually change the working patterns, and I think that will actually really help women in particular.
I'm smiling because it's such a big topic at the moment, and it seems to be at the heart of everything and every interview that I'm doing. And my point really is trust. I mean, we may not have trusted people before to work alone. There was always that image that you just wouldn't work.
Yeah, I think there's that culture, isn't there, of kind of presenteeism equals kind of productivity. And I think there's still some of that online. I speak to some of my friends who work for big corporates, and you say, how are you going? And they go, I've never been so busy. It's like, well, why? Because you're not traveling, you're not having those, sort of conversations over the coffee kind of pot that's really easy to then detract from getting on with your work. And it's because people are like whacking in lots of online meetings, because presenteeism is still a definer, I think, around productivity. And, I find it quite fascinating in this country that we have one of the lowest productivity rates. And I think part of that is because we value this turning up, being in the office at a time, and that whole last to leave the office syndrome, which I know happens in a lot of business cultures, and it's just so counterproductive. And I think it's interesting with something like Wellity and what you guys are trying to do. I think, business needs a Wellity, because actually we've got to have some of these conversations, and we've got to try and get people to understand that actually better well-being, happier staff, actually is going to lead to greater productivity. It's like, hopefully this is the COVID oh shit moment. Am I allowed to swear? I don't know if I'm allowed to swear.
Yeah, absolutely you are. We're all normal.
Yeah, and it's like, actually, maybe there is a different way. And that's kind of what we said about her spirit. Look, there's lots of stuff out there in wellbeing, but we think there's a different way to do this, and we think it could actually be better kind of long term. And I think that's what's sitting in front of business.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful. I'm always hopeful about the future and change.
Sorry, Holly, I'm just writing down that recommendation that you just gave for us. So I'll ask you to sign that later, and I'll make that public as soon as we've finished. Thank you for that.
What I like about you.
Isn't there a point? I agree with your point that by turning up to work psychologically at 8:30, 9 o'clock, we're at work. So it doesn't matter what we do really until 5 o'clock, because we're there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the culture and conversation that happens around it, isn't it? So, and I think it for me, it has to start at the top, and it's about leadership, and it's about leaders deciding what culture they want within their business. And I think if you're a leader that leads from a basis where you assume lack of trust with your staff rather than the other way around, then that will always create a set of behaviours, policies, principles that your business will be run by. One of the great business models I love, and Mr. Timpson, Timpson kind of.
Absolutely, yeah.
And if you read in the sort of Timpson family background, they have an inverted leadership model where they trust their staff. They have a manager who runs their shop, that all of us probably go into on our local high street. And it's down to the manager to run that shop. They don't get set limits around customer service and refunds and whatever. They're trusted to make really good decisions that are good for the business and good for the customer. And that business has grown. It's grown exponentially, over many years, and continues to. So I think there's some really inspirational business leaders out there, and I just love to see this next generation of leaders kind of lead with that type of kind of people first passion and conviction.
This will highlight the unauthentic leaders, though, because I do believe we're all in the same storm. We're just in different boats at the moment. And if you pretend that we're not, and you're unauthentic, and you're not relating and engaging with your staff now, by the way, way before you go back, it's an awkward conversation if you have that once people's minds are made up and they're in the office, I reckon.
Yeah, and I would say that through the journey of her spirit, we have talked to many businesses, and absolutely, of course, everybody wants their staff to be happier, healthier. Who's not going to say that they don't want that? What we often find is when it comes to making decisions about how you would create time and space in the day, or change your policies and practices, that's when businesses find it a lot harder. And actually there's that profit over people kind of conversation. And look, you have to have a balance. If you don't make profit, you can't employ your people. So you have to get the balance right. But I think if some business leaders, some HR directors, are honest with themselves, they know that there are compromises being made, probably more in favour of the profit rather than people. And I genuinely believe that if you get the people bit right, the profit actually piece will actually not just look after itself, you will grow and you will see growth within that. Critically, who I talked about earlier on, one of my mentors, he was MD of Metro Bank, started Metro Bank here in the UK, and if you read the Metro Bank book, they were all about creating fans, not customers. So, and that's embedded within their sort of staffing culture as well as it is their customer culture.
I'm just making a note of that. We can have a look at that afterwards. That's the next hour gone after this. And I agree with you about leaders. Identifying the problem isn't creating a solution. We can all keep talking about it, but it's what you do. So why have well-being at work?
I think, in terms of people, people spend a significant amount of time at work. And as an employer, you want, some of those employees to spend that time at work, and you want them to be productive and happy and healthy within there. So I think, any employer that isn't interested in the well-being of their staff, it's quite short-sighted. And I think, there's lots of good examples of where people are very happy in their work, that creates kind of better results. So for me, it's as much an economic decision as it is doing the right thing decision. It's kind of values, principles, and actually the economics of it just make sense, don't they?
Yes, because the CEO of Lloyd's came out with stories of his depression, opened the conversation throughout that massive organisation, and found that absenteeism levels reduced considerably because people were allowed, they were given the freedom and to talk about those.
Yeah.
Look, Holly, I've taken up a lot of your time and I want to get to these last four. I know how busy you are. What's your definition of well-being?
I think definition of well-being is someone that feels that sense of kind of purpose. They know who they are. They understand what drives them. And I think the purpose bit, why I talk so much about that, is that purpose is the thing that helps motivate you and drives you forward. But it also gives you that sense of joy when you're on that kind of journey. So people talk about happiness. Like, it's a hard word, isn't it, happiness? I quite like joy, because you just feel it. You walk along the street and you feel light, and you feel confident, and you feel positive, and you feel that inner joy. People talk about inner peace. That doesn't really kind of get me. Meditation and mind is still my kind of future quest, because I don't have a quiet mind. So peace is probably not the word, but I do get that sense of inner joy, where you just feel okay with the world. You kind of go, feel good, I feel okay, I feel good today and tomorrow and the next day. It doesn't mean to say you don't have bad days and down days, but actually overall you feel confident, happy, a bit joyful, and like you're living life. When I left my proper job, and I loved my job, and I started working for myself in kind of startups, I used to say to people, I feel properly alive now. Don't feel like I'm going through the motions. Even though I loved my jobs and I was passionate about every single one of those jobs, for me, the path that I'm on now is the path I think I was always meant to be on. And that's that bit for me where I just feel alive every day.
I agree. So many times people are climbing the ladder well, but they're just up against the wrong wall. Put the ladder on a different wall and you will go in the right direction. Mental health has is a big conversation within workplaces and life in general. I think it's hard for people to come forward when you're talking about potentially being mentally ill, mental health, when actually you just might be going through a low period of resilience. And I think the rewording could be around that in terms of organisations getting buy-in from the team. But was there ever a time where you had to show resilience in your life, Holly?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, when you do jump out your plane without a parachute, I joked about it earlier on, and you are literally free falling, and you don't know where your next penny is going to come from, then you've got choices, haven't you? You either do everything you can to keep free falling, or you let yourself hit the ground. And I think that's been 7 years for me. And I've had real periods of famine, majority famine actually, and some feast within that. And I think, I've learned to sort of control and manage those feelings of anxiety around that, and have a bit of faith in myself, and a bit of faith in actually that whole concept of good karma. What you put out in the world will come back. And faith is really easy to talk about, isn't it? I believe in it, but when it's not going your way, I mean, you can't see around the corner, it's hard to sort of stick with it and believe in it. So yeah, I've had some, I remember, probably when I was back living down in Devon, I used to walk the dogs every day, and there were periods of time where I think I put my podcast in and I listened, and sometimes I just felt quite empty and quite blank actually, because I knew I was through a period of the trough rather than the peaks, and I kind of just, I guess, learned to understand what was going on and find some coping mechanisms. Didn't always succeed, don't always succeed now, but yeah, I think we're human, aren't we? So we're always going to have periods of anxiety or periods where we feel overwhelmed. And I guess part of certainly what we're trying to do with Her Spirit is help you understand yourself and help you find some of those tools that will give you that resilience, that bit of resilience that people kind of talk about.
I'm smiling from ear to ear because I think we're cut from the same cloth. You normalise the conversation around it. As long as you're human, you've got blood going through and you're breathing, you were all on that scale, you have those emotions, and there won't be one person who won't relate to you with that story.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I think your word normalising is brilliant, because that's what we're trying to do with Her Spirit. We're normalising the conversation around being active, mental health, and also food. We're normalising every single element of that, so people don't feel shame, they feel empowerment, and they feel they're capable of actually achieving things in those dimensions that maybe they haven't achieved to date.
Yeah, the sooner everyone just accepts that we're all the same, the easier the conversation is. I'm going to ask you in a minute where people can find the details for Her Spirit and the best way to get in contact with you. But just to preempt that, if you could give one person a takeaway, whether it be life or in business, from your experience, what would it be?
So my business takeaway, and it's been my takeaway for a while, is when people say to me, "Oh, you left, a job and you've gone up into startups." They said, "What's your advice for me?" And I said, the advice I always give people is only spend the amount of money in your startup that you're prepared to lose. Yeah. And then I look at me and I go, no, do that, because if you do that, you'll not spend time fearing every single decision you make because you might lose it. So actually my biggest business advice is, only sort of spend what you're prepared to lose if you're doing a startup. So my business startup advice. For life, I think it is have courage, be brave, find out if your ladder is up against the wall that's your wall. And if it isn't, absolutely take that step, because you will never know what doors and opportunities will open for you. And and in sitting in COVID-19 times, I think about that every day. Every day I just think, I'm so pleased 7 years ago I jumped out that plane without that parachute. I've had some incredible experiences. I never thought. I ended up in San Francisco working on an app. I won't bore you with the path I got there, but it was a path that I got there because doors opened, because I jumped out that plane. So, and don't delay it. Do it today. You know, I learned as someone who died 2 days ago of COVID-19 that really shocked me. And I remember talking to him about his dreams and what he was hoping to do in the next couple of years. And those little moments, you just think, you can't delay this. You have to make those decisions now because, you know, I'm not a fatalistic person, but I think, you know, you have to grab the opportunity. And you know what? If it doesn't work, go back and get a job. There will be hundreds of them out there. You're employable now, so why not take that step? And if it doesn't work, go and get employment. You'll never ask yourself that question, what if?
You only regret the things you don't do. I couldn't agree with everything that you're saying more. And what you're doing, I think, at Her Spirit is you're personally mixing your passion and your purpose. And self-improvement is the most addictive drug I've found.
Yeah, what a great job. That's why I feel joy, because I just think, what a great job to have.
Right. Look, where can everyone find you?
So you can find us at herspirit.co.uk. So check out sort of who we are and what we offer. You can also go straight to the Apple and Google app stores. Just put in Her Spirit and you can download us. We're completely free until the end of June. We're sort of lucky enough to get some funding from Sport England that have allowed us to make everything free and available up until that point. Yeah, so come and join us, join the community, come and do something you never thought possible.
Yes, I'd urge everyone to go and check Holly out at Her Spirit. Look, thank you. Thank you. I've really enjoyed it, as I do every conversation I have with you.
Yeah, likewise. We can have a little loving at the end now, so people can kind of go, oh.
Yeah, that's right. All right, we'll forget that. Right. Anyway, look, Holly, thank you ever so much, and best of luck with you and your mission.
Yeah, likewise, Simon. I think the world needs Wellity, so right behind you, and yeah, look forward to seeing how you progress on your journey and working with you.
Perfect. Thank you very much.